So hi, this is Professor Gregory. I'm here today to try and answer some of the questions I've received from students this semester. First question is, do psychologists actually analyze patients' dreams? We'll say probably not. It's most likely going to be a therapist or an analyst that will be working with patients and working with dreams. Psychologists might work with dreams in a laboratory setting, but they'll be working with the content of the dream, most likely without the actual patient or dreamer. So most of the time when we're doing work with theories about dreams, we're working with theories that we'd apply in psychotherapy. Okay. Our next question, how many theories can we apply to the analysis of dreams? And the answer to that is almost infinite. There are many, many theories that work with dreams, that seem to understand dreams, tell us how to interpret dreams. I'd say in our approach, we're trying to do this with as little contamination or speculation as possible. So we're attempting to look at the dream as something that applies to the dreamer's life. Then the question of how does it apply and how can we help the dreamer understand that. There's also the idea of using a multi-dimensional approach, which is something that we do in our class. We approach the dream with theories ranging from psychoanalytic to humanistic, existential, and eventually to cognitive or cognitive behavioral theories. So the best answer for what will work with a dream is what works with an individual. And we'll attempt to introduce you to several of the major theoretical approaches to understanding the content of dreams and how they apply to the dreamer's life. Next question, can I analyze a dream with limited knowledge of what was happening in my life around the time of the dream? The answer to that question is yes, but your interpretation or your analysis of the dream will also be limited. If we think of the dream as making a comment on the dreamer's life at the time, it's very helpful to have some kind of background of what was actually happening in the dreamer's life. And sometimes what students often do is leave out things that are subtle, they think are not important, and they end up being pieces that are really necessary to help us understand the dream and how it applies to the dreamer's life at the time. So overall, the answer to the question is yes. However, that interpretation will be very limited. Another question, do dreams define a person? I can't answer that question. I have no idea. Next question, what causes us to dream? And scientists are still out with that. There are many ideas about sleep and the causes of sleep, and we don't have a really solid answer to that yet. There are many factors involved that are necessary for sleep. As far as what causes us to dream, we'd say we dream because we can. How often have students had emotional reactions when working with active imagination or the empty chair? Have any of them ever gotten out of hand? Well, in the classroom, we're not doing therapy. We're approaching an understanding of theoretical concepts and their application. That said, material can be encountered which is eye-opening or sometimes an opportunity for growth, we'll say. And in the classroom setting, we don't encourage an actual depth that we would do in analysis or therapy. We would probably stop the experiment at that point and then allow the person to do that personal work on their own if they choose to do so. Have I ever worked with someone who has experienced psychosis or personality disorder? The answer to that question is possibly. If we look at research, suggests that 1 in 5 college-aged adults has a personality disorder, and I've had hundreds of students over the past 10 or 11 years. I probably have worked with some students with personality disorders. Some people are discouraged from working with dreams. People say with borderline personality disorder, people who have a history of psychosis, people who are unstable in some ways, should probably not attempt to do the work. And like I say, our classroom is not a therapy session. It's not a therapeutic container. So we would discourage any kind of depth in the work in that way with with students or dreamers who have a history of psychiatric issues. Do all dreams have meaning? I have no idea. It's helpful, as Jung says, to consider that the dream might have a meaning. Otherwise, what would be the purpose of trying to attempt an analysis? What is my dream about? Now again, I'm going to go to Jung and say, I have no idea what your dream is about. However, if you're interested, I would be happy to help you explore the dream. What does the road in my dream mean? I have no idea what the road in your dream means. I could suggest what it means to me. I could suggest what roads do. But that would be to speculate or contaminate your analysis of your own dream. I think it's most helpful to ask you, what does the road mean to you? What's the road like? Describe the road. What's your experience of the road? You think of roads, the common usage. Roads are connectors. Roads are pathways. Roads are places where other people travel. It's not open ground or an unbroken trail. It's a path that's already established. So we could look at contextually or culturally, what does a road do? What does it mean? But it's really up to the individual to decide what the thing means to them. What does the end of the world mean to me? I have no idea what the end of the world means to you. There's some suggestion in Jungian analysis that the Armageddon or the end of the world is the sort of the breaking down of the ego's idea that it is the whole center of the personality. For Jungians, the ego is a component of the personality, a necessary component, but there's a larger component of the personality Jung called the self. And so Jungian analysts might see that this is the self breaking through to kind of tell the ego to wake up. That said, I have no idea what it means to you in your dream. What images actually have meaning universally? I'll go back to Jung again. He says, well, a lot of the symbols that seem to have meaning universally or archetypally, across cultures, across time, tend to be symbols with religious value. Yeah, I'll go with that. Symbols with religious value tend to be the ones that are more universally understood. That said, it is possible that an individual may have a different interpretation or feeling about those particular symbols, which is fine. In reference to many dream analysis books, are there any actual images that hold evidence? I'm not sure I understand the question. We would say that there are many ways to interpret symbols from the perspective of analytical psychology or archetypal psychology, which tends to be where my training is. Yeah, the images are there, they repeat over time. There's so much consistency across culture and across time, across geography, that many of these images tend to hold their value across time, culture, geography, and they tend to appeal to something within the human psyche. Do we focus on the bad rather than the good in dreams? You borrow from content analysis and say that the majority of dreams tend to have a negative affect or feeling. And if you look at the basic emotions of a human being, of the basic 6, 4 of them are negative. 1, happiness or joy, positive, and surprise, could go either way. So the basic emotions tend to be more about negativity than positivity. So, yeah, it's likely that the dream will portray those sort of feelings as well. Also, if we look at brain imaging studies and EEGs, patients dreaming in REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, the amygdala is particularly active during that stage of sleep, and we know the amygdala is one of those parts of the brain that processes fear and negative emotions. Is a dream a way of coping? I'm going to go to Jung and say that the dream provides an opportunity for understanding the compensatory function of psyche, meaning that there are many things in waking that we don't encounter consciously or that we tend to reject, and that the dream may portray a different point of view that would allow us to adapt and possibly become a more balanced person. Will we get to the true meaning of the dream? If so, when? I have no idea if we'll get to the true meaning of the dream or if we'll ever know the true meaning of the dream. So as we approach the dream through analysis, that we will get closer to some possibilities that you can sort out for yourself. And most likely the opportunity will appear around the middle of the semester as we engage in some of the approaches that allow us more depth into the images of the dream, the substance of the dream, the context of the dreamer's life. And then at the end of the semester, we'll attempt to wrap things up, and we'll apply Marianne Mattoon's 4 tests of the truth of an interpretation when we get toward the end of the semester. What if I spend a lot of time trying to interpret a dream and get nothing? Question back to this questioner. What are you avoiding? Next question. How will this change me if I figure the dream out? Well, that would be up to you. I mean, if you get a part of yourself back, or something becomes a conscious or aware that you had not known about before, you have a choice about what to do with it. Given that you have the resources to make the change, you may decide to change. Some people don't. They just go on, continue to exist the same way they have been before. I would say I've had dreams that have really allowed me an opportunity to grow and to change and hopefully become a better person. That possibility exists, and it's a matter of what will you do with it. How accurate is active imagination? I'm not sure I understand the question, but I'd say that if you engage in active imagination with integrity and honesty, you will most likely get something new or some kind of surprise that you have not been aware of before. What happens to our brains when we dream? Lots of stuff is happening to the brain, and scientists are digging and learning more about that as we go. I don't think there's a final answer at this point. Brains continue to do what brains do. I mean, they synapse, they transfer information. They, in terms of memory, engage in long-term potentiation. There's an idea that during dreaming is a kind of a taking out the trash, that remnants of things that are no longer necessary are let go of. There's theories of neurotoxicity where during sleep and during dreams that the brain is kind of taking out sort of the after effects of being busy all day. There's also new research that indicates that the brain and cerebral spinal fluid is linked to the lymph system, and there is kind of a taking out the trash, a removal of toxins during sleep. Is self-inception possible? I have no idea. Is it possible to read science books, etc., in dreams? Yes. I'd say based on my experience, it's rather rare that a person that's dreaming will see a sign, will see a badge, and very often as they attempt to read it, the letters will blur. It seems to be fairly rare that a person is actually able to read a sign, read the words or numbers on something in a dream. That's it. It's not impossible, it's going to be rare. How do we distinguish a little dream from a big dream? All right, so we'll go to Jung again. And the idea is not that the little dream is less than the big dream. It's not a pejorative term. It's the idea of a big dream is something like the shaman, the medicine man, the tribal elders would have dreams in more primitive societies. And these dreams would be about the nation or the people. And often the decisions about what to do regarding issues maybe having to do with resources or adaptations or survival would come from the dreams. We might say that the big dreams for Jungians are derived from the collective unconscious. The little dreams Jung considered to be personal, and these have to do with the person. Now that said, these little dreams can have a huge impact. And the second part of that question actually is, what if a little dream has a deeper meaning? Good. Well, that's a good thing. We can apply the same processes. We'd say, you're not dreaming for the collective, it's about yourself, and that little dream could have a big impact on your life. How do I know when dreams are significant? Well, if you're not avoiding them, you will know. Something within you will tell you. The ideas will linger. Oftentimes the affect, or the feeling of the dream will linger. There's a sense of curiosity. Sometimes there's an intense sense. I really need to know what this is about and how it impacts me. Follow it. Question, what is the purpose of dreaming? Science is really hasn't come to a final conclusion on that. We might say the purpose of dreaming is to dream. That whether or not the dream has meaning, it's a part of our awareness that goes on as we sleep. It could be a continuation of the day's thoughts. It could be a collection of ideas from the unconscious. It could be a simmering of things coming together. The purpose of dreaming, I'll say the purpose of dreaming is to dream. What is the purpose of dreams in their simplest form? See the above. What is the purpose of people dreaming the same images? All right, so there's a couple ways to look into this question. One is that the same dreamer dreams this image over time. And we might say here that, well, this image has possibly some significance. Anything that's repeated in a dream is most likely to be more significant than something that occurs once. The other way to look at the question is multiple people could be dreaming the same images. Well, there could be something going on collectively that people are engaged in, and so that image just tends to be spread across the culture at that time. How can I distinguish conscious from unconscious, and which one should I listen to? Great question. How can I distinguish conscious from unconscious? Well, in part by the affect, by the feeling tone, what's going on. How does this image or this feeling operate in the field of awareness? If you're pulled into the past or driven into the future, if you are emotionally overreactive, it's probably something unconscious that's going on. And which should you listen to? Well, I suggest you listen to both, and then use consciousness to evaluate. That consciousness has the 5 core functions. According to John Betts, there's stability of identity, stability of personality, executive functioning, cognition, and finally reality testing. Use the ability of the ego to reality test and evaluate. Do you have a gut feeling? Do you have an intuition? Don't write it off, but also don't let the unconscious lead all the time. That we need the ego to be involved. How do I know when my unconscious is speaking to me? Were you dreaming? Were you daydreaming? Or has a complex been activated? Are you projecting something? So in a way, we need to become aware of these impulses or ideas or feelings as they emerge from the unconscious. And that awareness of that gives us some idea of what the affect is. How can I decide which dreams are worth interpreting? What are you avoiding? Next question, what am I avoiding? Well, I mean, me personally, or I'm coming from the dreamer, from the student, what am I avoiding? The question, what if I don't feel anything about my dream? What are you avoiding? How do I know when I'm close to having an emotional connection to my dream? You might actually feel something, or you'll feel the resistance or the avoidance of feeling something. If something avoids me in a dream, can that help me find out what I'm avoiding? Possibly. Can communications with the unconscious help me learn what I'm avoiding? Possibly. What if I never find out what I'm avoiding? You're probably going to be rather dull and stuck. What causes recurring themes in dreams? The idea of the recurring theme is that this is something that's announcing itself over and over again, and it's one idea of it is that it's something that wants our attention. And obviously it hasn't gotten it yet, or we don't understand the message. So the theme is served up again and again in the dreams as a way of directing our attention toward that. It could be an area where we're stuck, where we lack resources, where there's an opportunity for growth. Okay. How am I stuck? How can I figure out if I'm stuck? Do you ask the question a lot? You're probably stuck. How does working in groups help us understand our dreams? We can do a lot with self-analysis with dreams. However, we're often blind to our blind spots. There are sensitive areas which we're used to avoiding that may be apparent to other people, but not apparent to us. So in a proper dream group, what is a proper dream? A proper dream group is one where feedback can be offered that doesn't encourage speculation or contamination of the field. We work with what the dreamer presents. We may possibly throw up a mirror in a way and say, hey, you've mentioned this 6 or 7 times. Could you have a look at that? So work with others helps to give us a greater degree of a view of the dream, a wider perspective. Now, the question of how to do that without contaminating the dreamer's experience becomes really important. So you don't work with a bunch of people who have no training or no background in this, because they're most likely going to jump in with their interpretations or opinions or something they read in a book. To work in a decent dream group involves a lot of things, and they could be helpful or not. It's possible working in a group with people with even a little bit of training that will help illuminate some things that are still dark for the dreamer. How can I know when I'm fully done with the dream? You'll never be fully done with the dream. The official list of banned words. All right. So in my class, we've created a list of banned words, and the banned words are there because they all indicate somehow that we're avoiding something. Why and because, those are the dirty words in the Gestalt approach, and they tend to have to do with explaining, and explaining, it takes us away from the direct experience. So anything that allows us to avoid the direct experience, finding reasons, finding causes, explanations, these are deflections away from the experience. So our typical list of banned words: why, because, reason, cause, and the ever popular Hollywood therapist phrase. How does that make you feel? It's like, own the feeling. I feel such and such. The puppy doesn't make me sad. I feel sad when I see the puppy. Look into it. In a way, our culture, our time, it trains us to avoid the experience of being here in the present. So the banned words are all there to bring our attention to coming back to the present, to being here in the moment. This is where everything's happening. Not in the past, not in the future. Only now. All right, well, thank you for your attention, and send in your questions. I'll see if I can answer them again. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.